So the Bible as it is, neno lazima lisomwe regardless of the situation. The Bible has to be read. It's my commitment to read. So I read it. And last time I read Genesis chapter 9 and 10. Today I'm going to go to chapter 11, and if all goes well, I'll go to chapter 12 too. But just to remind ourselves, from the last chapter we see the lessons learned from the last chapter and the main message from the main chapter. A fresh start is possible at any stage of life. The fulfillment of God's promises does not depend on our performances but on His grace. It is dangerous to move ahead without first seeking God's direction. Even when we stray, God can direct our course and redeem our lives. So that is the lessons learned from that chapter 9 and 10. Bible as it is, Genesis chapter 12. I might proceed to chapter 13, but yes, I'm reading Genesis chapter 12. And by the way, guys, I said I'm Catholic. I love Catholic. And they say that if you go to Catholic church, if you went to church continuously non-stop for 3 years consecutively, you will have read the whole Bible. Yes. So I'm going to read Genesis chapter 12. Lesson from the last chapter. One of the important things that I noted from the last chapter is where they built the Tower of Babel, and one thing I noted is that I don't understand why God was jealous, because chapter 11 verse 5 tells us that, but the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. Look, he said, if they can accomplish this when they have just begun to take advantage of their common language and political unity, just think of what they will do later. So God divided them. Let's go down and give them different languages, then they won't be able to understand each other. That is my lesson from that chapter. That is Genesis chapter 11, verse 5 to 7. God divides people using different languages. A little confusion there, but I'm going on. The Bible as it is. So the Bible as it is, Genesis chapter 12. The call of Abram. Then the Lord told Abram, leave your country, your relatives, and your father's house, and go to the land that I will show you. I will cause you to become the father of a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and I will make you a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. All the families of the earth will be blessed through you. Abram departed as the Lord had instructed him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all his wealth, his livestock, and all the people who had joined his household at Haran, and finally arrived in Canaan. Traveling through Canaan, they came to a place near Shechem and set up a camp beside Oak at Moreh. At that time, the area was inhabited by Canaanites. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I am going to give this land to your offspring. And Abram built an altar there to commemorate the Lord's visit. After that, Abraham traveled southward and set up a camp in the hill country between Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar and worshipped the Lord. Then Abram traveled south by stages toward the Negev. At that time there was a severe famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to wait it out. At that time there was a severe famine, hunger in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to wait it out. As he was approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to Sarai, you are a very beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Let's kill him. Then we can have her. But if you say you are my sister, then the Egyptians will treat me well because of their interest in you, and they will spare my life. And sure enough, when they arrived in Egypt, everyone spoke of her beauty. When the palace officials saw her, they sang her praises to their king, the Pharaoh, and she was taken into his harem. Then Pharaoh gave Abram many gifts because of her: sheep, cattle, donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord sent a terrible plague upon Pharaoh's household because of Sarai. Abraham's wife. So Pharaoh called for Abram and accused him sharply. "What is this you have done to me?" he demanded. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why were you willing to let me marry her, saying she was your sister? Here is your wife. Take her and be gone." Pharaoh then sent them out of the country and under armed escort. Abram and his wife with all the household and belongings. Wow. Okay. So chapter 13, Abram and Lot Separate. So they left Egypt and traveled to north into the Negev. Abram, his wife, and Lot, and all they owned. For Abram was very rich in livestock, silver and gold. Then they continued traveling by stages towards Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where they had camped before. This was the place where Abram had built the altar, and there he again worshipped the Lord. Now Lot, who was traveling with Abram, was also very wealthy with sheep, cattle, and many tents. But the land could not support both Abram and Lot with all their flocks and their herds living too close together. There were too many animals for the available pasture land, so an argument broke out between the herdsmen of Abraham and Lot. At that time, Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land. Then Abram talked it over with Lot. This arguing between our herdsmen has got to stop. He said, "After all, we are close relatives. I will tell you what we will do. Take your choice of any section of the land you want, and we will separate. If you want that area over there, then I will say stay here. If you want to stay in this area, then I will move on the other place." Lot took a long look at the fertile plains of the Jordan Valley in the direction of Zoar. The whole area was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord or the beautiful land of Egypt. This was before the Lord had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot chose that land for himself. The Jordan Valley to the east of them, he went there with his flocks and servants and parted company with his uncle Abraham. So while Abraham stayed in the land of Canaan, Lot moved his tents to a place near Sodom, among the cities of the plain. The people of this area were unusually wicked and sinned greatly against the Lord. After Lot was gone, the Lord said to Abraham, "Look, as far as you can see is every direction. I am going to give all this land to you and your offspring as a permanent possession, and I am going to give you so many descendants that like dust, they cannot be counted. Take a walk in every direction and explore the new possessions I am giving you." Then Abraham owned the Mamre, which is a Hebron. There he built an altar to the Lord. Then Abram moved his camp to the oak grove owned by Mamre, which is at Hebron. There he built an altar to the Lord. So explanation of chapter 12 and 13. Our relationship with God is a two-way street. He is there to help us, but He also expects us to follow His plan. When God called Abram to leave his country and his people and go to a land that God would show him, God promised to guide him, but Abram had to walk by faith. God has promised to be with us as we seek His help, but He may also ask some of us, as with Abram, God may call us away from the familiar world that drags us down. If we want to progress, we will need to follow His plan. God gave Abraham some special promises. He would make Abraham a great nation. He would bless him and make him famous, and He would make Abraham a blessing to others. God promised to bless those who blessed Abram and to curse those who cursed him. After receiving God's blessings, Abraham was to turn around and share it with others. So, too, we are to share our experience of spiritual renewal with others. This verse indicates the beginning of Abram's radical obedience to God. Having discovered God's will, Abram became willing to do what God's plan required of him. Our spiritual renewal begins when we learn to seek God's will and follow it without reservation. We may wonder what Abraham expected the promised land to be like. In this passage, we see that he arrived to find the land ravaged by famine. It probably wasn't what he had expected, or we may wonder what Abraham expected the promised land to be like. It is in this passage we see that he arrived to find the land ravaged by famine. It probably wasn't what he expected or hoped for, but it was the place that God had intended for him and his descendants. There will be times when things are difficult. We may need to do things that we are not comfortable doing, but we need to follow God even when His plan doesn't lead us down the paths we had expected or hoped for. The lies that Abram told here showed that he lacked faith in God. He didn't believe that God would protect, so he took things into his own hands. We may feel that a little lie is justified if it is intended to protect something important to us. We may even succeed in getting away with it for a while, but all lies reap long-term consequences. It is best to trust God to protect us as we tell the truth. The God of truth will stand. The God of truth will stand with us as we dare to speak the truth. As Abraham and Sarai approached Egypt, Abraham began to fear that the Egyptians would kill him. to take his beautiful wife. So Abram and Sarai spun a lie to protect their relationship. They spread a story that they were brother and sister. This was a half-truth. They were half-siblings, but it should be recognized that a half-truth is a whole lie. And like most lies, this one backfired, almost destroying Abram and Sarai's marriage. Total honesty is an essential key to spiritual renewal. We need to be careful to avoid doing what Abram and Sarai did. Even though they did it with the best of intention, dishonesty never pays. Never try to rationalize it. That is 8. So, chapter 13, Revelation, explanation. A conflict developed between the families of Abram and Lot over pasture land for their flocks. To strengthen the strained family relationship, Abram offered Lot first choice of the land. Abram realized that people were more important than possessions, so he sacrificed his right to the best land and maintain harmony between their families. We need to learn this important lesson. Our relationships are more important than the things we own. One bad choice often leads to another. The choices Lot made here and in the following chapter led him toward his later fall. Here, he selfishly chose the best land and the easy lifestyle that would accompany it. He chose in chapter 13 verse, he chose to move closer to the wicked city. Sodom in 19, he chose to become an important man in a wicked place. His fall reached its final depth as he had an incestuous relationship with his daughters. We need to think ahead, reflecting on the probable consequences of our present decisions. This is the word of the Lord from Genesis chapter 12 and 13 and explanation. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe if you have not. Share, read, refresh, remind yourself about the Bible, and thank you for watching. See you in the next chapter. Bye-bye.